I thought that today our theme would be how to win at chess, or how to create a winning mindset for yourself. Because, for any, I'm pretty sure that any chess player who is watching, all of us have been in a situation where we had to win to get what we wanted, whether it's, the national championships or your club championship, or maybe you just want to finally win against your friend or your father that you just finally want to beat. So today I thought we would learn those winning strategies from the best players in the world through their games at the World Cup.
Absolutely great. Yes, and it's such an important point. So I'm very curious of what you have picked out for us.
Yeah. Okay. So the two games that I think fit this theme particularly well are the Carlsen versus Keymer game. Mm-hmm. And there was also one in the women's section, Koneru against Humpy Koneru, because in both of these matches, the players lost the first game of their match. So Carlsen and Koneru lost the first game of their match with only one chance left to advance. So it's to make a comeback in the second game. Mm-hmm. And the World Cup, it's such an unforgiving tournament that one mistake could mean that you're just out of the tournament completely. So there's usually very little chance to come back after a lost game, but strong players manage to do it. And we'll see which strategies they use and how they approach the game in that case.
Great. Okay, let's dive right into this. So with which one do we start?
I think we'll start with the Magnus game, because mm-hmm. that's one that everybody hears about and that we've seen happen mm-hmm. Just yesterday. And as we're recording, there's tie breaks going on, so we still don't know who's going to make it. But
yeah, how
really
crazy
exciting.
Is that? It's absolutely fascinating. You know by now, I'm absolutely sure. So it was the Ruy Lopez, right?
Yeah, it started out with the Ruy Lopez variations. And what I noticed is that whenever there's a must-win situation like this, strong players always choose some sort of a surprise opening. Mm-hmm. And in this case, Magnus played bishop g5 here. So normally we don't usually see this move. Usual way to continue things is to play castling and to play c3, go for this d4 plans, and play h3. This is something we've seen a lot in the Ruy Lopez, in the Italian type of structures, mm-hmm. and that would be a typical way to play it. And I'm sure that they're both really, really used to these positions. So he decided to play not a popular move at all that we don't see much at all. And that's one of the key characteristics of what these players choose, is that when you are in a must-win situation, you need to make a surprise opening as early as possible.
That's a good point. Absolutely, yeah.
The game continued with both of them obviously were out of theory at some point. Magnus probably knew it a bit longer because he is the one who prepared the surprise. But here's some trades have been made, and that's another aspect that we see a lot, is that they try to make it imbalanced. So mm-hmm. here he traded his bishop for the knight, and usually, a draw is the same thing as a loss to him. So he wants to just have something different, not have the exact same pawn structure, not have the exact same sets of pieces. And that really helps to just to reduce the drawing chances a bit more, because it just makes the position more like untypical to play mm-hmm. for the opponent.
Super interesting, yeah.
Here's something that we don't see often in the Ruy Lopez, is that actually, after a couple of moves, and all of these are just developing for both of them, but after a couple of moves, white castled long. So now it doesn't even look like it came from that opening anymore. Yeah. So that's a good sign that both of them are on their own now, with opposite side castling, where both sides can attack on different sides of the board, which is what I think Magnus actually wanted from this game. And it's an ideal outcome that he could convert this attack.
Very brave. In the open line, basically.
We're now at a really important moment where I think your German compatriot Vincent actually had a chance to just win this whole match and to knock Magnus Carlsen out. I don't know if you already are familiar with this tactic, but Magnus played a3, which was a big mistake. So maybe for people who did not see this game live or did not see the evaluation of it, try to find the winning tactic for black here.
Yeah. I know it already, but I just wanted to mention that Vincent didn't find it, and that when he played another move, I saw the face of, because the cameras are on the players. Meanwhile, right? It's an absolute standard thing in the big tournaments that you can see their expressions. So Magnus was like looking to the side and went like, "Oh, dodged a bullet. That was really close." You just felt like that. He was like, "Whew, what did I just do? What just happened here?" And then you saw Vincent, how he was like, "Oh." Like a little bit like, "Oh no," I
realized it a bit later.
Yeah. It's very subtle, but he also saw it then, and he was like, "Oh, all right." Yeah. So you probably have stopped the video and checked it out for yourself. So yeah, you can actually take on e4.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have found it either, by the way.
Really?
Probably. Yeah.
I thought it was. I thought it was like for players of their level. I thought that, they would see it like pretty much instantly whenever, if they were told that it's like, it's a wrong move, they would see it immediately. But it's what I found surprising, like Vincent took the queen immediately, like pretty much no time. So instead of taking, he took queen c3. So maybe maybe he trusted the opponent a bit too much, which tends to happen when people play Magnus. But maybe he just trusted that it didn't exist. But I think it's like a very, like compared to all the other crazy tactics that they find in this tournament, this was, just a blitz tactic for all of them. And so the idea with knight e4 is that you can never take back the knight, because you will just lose also 2 pawns in the process, and also the piece will be lost as well. One of the two, either the knight or the bishop.
Yeah, you can just not defend them, which looks. This is where it is so irritating for me, because you just think like there must be one move which will protect both of them, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, that's true. And also, if the queen gets taken, then
exactly
exact same idea is that the rook will attack both of them, and there's no way to defend both. And so the best thing to do would probably just be to play this endgame down a pawn for white. And it didn't look like very good chances for white at all. Even to hold the draw, it wasn't a great chance, but to let alone win probably would have been impossible. So it was really, he really did dodge a bullet there. And the game after that was still, a masterpiece. So we will of course see the rest as well, because Magnus did manage to come back after this and to get a winning endgame for himself. But it wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy either. So another key aspect of, having maximizing your winning chances when you have to win is to play positions that are comfortable for yourself. And we know that Magnus is amazing at endgames, and it's his endgame skills that really put him above everybody else of the top players. And so I think it was a good choice, and he was happy to play an endgame, even though a draw wasn't. He didn't need the draw, but he's really good at just pushing for these endgames over time. So how do you think you would approach this endgame, and how would you play this for white for a win?
Yeah, just to summarize it up, I mean, one of his core strengths is endgame. For me, it wouldn't be endgame. So what I would try to also follow up, as you just mentioned correctly, is try to get some of your strengths and try to force some of your strengths in. So I would try to, I wouldn't find anything, unfortunately, but I would try to find some very crazy sacrificing moves, maybe, which would give me an opportunity. But anyway, so how would I approach this endgame? Yeah, this is the difficult part, right? So it might be to build on this double pawn, which is c6, c7, and keep my pawns connected and try to exchange all the pieces so only pawns are left. That would be one approach, but I wouldn't know how to get this done.
It's a cool approach to try to exchange all the pieces, because the pawn endgame, if the king actually gets somewhere here, then yes, it's a very good pawn endgame, and black has more pawn weaknesses. So that was a good point, that the black's pawn weaknesses could be a target for us. And usually what we see strong players do in the endgames is that they they play it slow and try to gain space, because space, it might not seem like a lot at first, and it takes maybe 20 moves to actually do this and consolidate, but it ends up being important at some point, because at some point a pawn break will work, or we will open up a file, and it's the one who has the more space, who has the control of when that happens and if it happens and what they even want to do with it. So that's exactly what he tries to do. He gains space on the king side at first, so that the pawns are there. He makes he blocks it up a little bit to have strong squares for himself, and now he's going to also focus on the weaknesses that Black has on the queen side too. But it's not an easy task, because the position is equal the whole time. So there's not really a reason why Black should lose and have a lot more weaknesses.
Yeah.
But that's why this game was a really interesting one to follow. So it got closed up, and honestly, at this point, I would think that there's not too much hope left for White to really have huge winning chances. But as long as there's pieces on the board, and as long as there is some type of imbalance like we have here, there's always a chance. So it's and here, sometimes whenever you're in a must-win position, you have no choice left than to try. So it ends up for these really good endgame masterpieces that because he had to try to win, so it ended up being a really nice finish. So Black was also running out of moves, of course, when the position got so close. And what is a good strategy, once again, is that you always want to pose some problems for the opponent. So give something to calculate, such as here, a pawn break. So now Black will have to calculate both e5 and g5 at some point. So he cannot just shuffle around and play normal moves and just, if you want to try to win, you can try, but he'll just stand there. So that's a really good strategy, especially in time trouble, is just to give things to calculate. Because that's where most people make mistakes, and nobody's perfect at calculations. That even world champions aren't perfect at it. And so just giving these little threats here and there is a good strategy, which is what Magnus does all along in the endgame. And one of the pawn breaks ended up working, which is the e5 pawn break. It didn't give anything special. It just opened up some files. And now that we see this position, notice how there is suddenly a bit more weaknesses than there was before.
That's how quick it goes.
Yeah.
Without even seeing it, yeah.
I'll go through some of the next moves bit quicker, because we want to get to the final mistake.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nice. I always like this idea that you use this pawn as an umbrella. The term from Carsten Müller, because this was when I saw the Black position, I thought, but he just takes, Black just takes, and then you just move the king in front of the pawn and nothing happens immediately.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter when you take it. This, whenever a pawn is weak, it can be taken at any point.
Yeah.
And it's not going to promote anywhere. So they made some exchange of the pawns, and what turns out is that White is actually down a pawn. So Magnus is down a pawn, but he's still pushing for the win, because his pawn is a passed pawn. The A pawn is the pawn that won him the game at the end. But Black, even though they have an extra pawn, none of these pawns have really a chance at passing to the end of the board. So a couple more moves, some more trades, and once again, looks like he's down a pawn, and what else is there to do than just to make a draw with opposite colored bishops and rooks. But there's still always a chance. So he wins the pawn back, and now we see that it's different. Now it's just White who's trying to play for a win with his passed pawn on the side. And the way to make a draw here for Black was quite complicated, I would think. He had to play something along the lines of king f7, and to just hold this endgame, because apparently this is holdable, so that this pawn never promotes. The other pawn can't really promote because this rook can't really leave the c file, or else the pawn will hang.
Yeah.
And it can't leave the fifth rank because this pawn will hang. So and the king is close enough to help kind of on both sides. So somehow this was a draw. It's not easy to evaluate at all, and they would, of course, keep playing, so it's not necessarily a draw. But this was a bit better than what happened, because this pawn went here in the game, and we get to the blunder that Black made, which was bishop g2. So how do you think White wins from here on? From here on, it's just winning suddenly after Black seemingly did not too many wrong things, but there is a way now.
That's so evil, right? You're not really making any big mistakes, and you still will lose this game. So I don't know exactly how it was, because when this happened, I was already on my way back to home with my bicycle, but I listened to the live stream on ChessBase India, and but I mean, probably it's getting the king around and to the a pawn, and then push the a pawn through to become a queen. If it sounds that easy, I don't know. That would be an idea I have.
Yeah, that's true. And there's only one move that actually does it. And do you want to guess it, or do you want me to tell you?
I would have said king e5, but apparently that's not the right move.
Yeah, it's not king e5.
Huh. Well then, what is it then? Is it rook e5?
You're very close.
Oh, rook f5.
Yeah, it is rook f5.
That is,
and there is a difference actually. So we saw that the line that was making a draw, the bishop was here on e2. So that's one of the key ideas here, is to keep up this attack on c4.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once the bishop went here, the bishop missed its chance to stay on this diagonal, and rook f5 does exactly that. It doesn't let the bishop come here and to attack that pawn effectively. And this rook also has a different purpose, to let the king into c5 and b6. And once the king gets there, it's pretty much over. So unfortunately for that bishop, he just couldn't come back where he needed to anymore, and this ended up just being a lost game after the rook reposition, and now it's defended, and the king also got away with it
so cool.
to promote the pawn.
Okay.
Well, they made a couple of more moves, but it was already done because the pawn got too far. So that's how this must-win situation was turned around from completely, from a lost tactic to a drawn endgame, and then to a winning endgame. And he used some of these key strategies that usually make up for just maximizing your chances to win when there's no other choice to go for a draw.
Yes, good tips. And yeah, it is out of a sudden the game really turns a bit around once you need to win. There's no other way. I think I didn't have that often. Yeah, sometimes you give yourself. I always played tournaments without KO. I think you've played in KO tournaments already, right?
I played in World Cup in 2021. So in this format I did, but it's more so for me. It's more like of the last round of something that I have to win. So sometimes I do it, sometimes not. I'm not one type or the other. So some people are really good at it under pressure. Some people are they always lose the decisive game. I'm somewhere in the middle. I sometimes happens, sometimes not, depending on how we both play, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I remember, by the way, the World Cup, it was so close. It only went into the tie breaks, and you barely lost until the second tie break, or even the third tie break. It was like, it was really, really, really tough. So now we're having the game between Koneru and Humpy Koneru. I didn't look at this at all, so now I'm surprised.
That's good. So this is going to be new.
Yeah.
So it was once again the situation where one of the players lost. Well, of course, one of them has to lose, but they had to win the second round, and in this case, it was Humpy Koneru, and she was playing black. So it's even a harder task to be playing black and having to win as black.
Yeah.
And remember, one of the first things that that you do whenever you need
your opponent, maybe.
Yeah, so it was the surprise opening, and she picked something very surprising.
That's the hippopotamus opening almost.
Yeah, this is technically right now. It started with a queen's fianchetto, so it's for now it looks like something like that. But she later, as we move through the opening, she does play the hippopotamus.
How crazy! Yeah, that is. I think I've never seen this in big tournament. And she's like, she was 2,600 at a while. And one of our who made a Fritz trainer about the hippopotamus defense. It just came out a couple of months ago. It's very interesting. Oh God, I forgot his name. You know at home, of course, who I'm talking about. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's fascinating.
It's not something we see a lot, no. And I don't necessarily. It's not considered a good opening at the very top level. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't want to say not good, but it's maybe like +1 for white, which is a lot for grandmasters, right? So it's a very big risk, but at this point we're choosing between losing and winning, so there's no reason to play it safe anymore for the player who has to who wants to advance to the next tie breaks. But I found it really interesting choice to do this for black, totally. And it paid off. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. Mm-hmm. So eventually this became something close to the King's Indian too. If at least it reminded me of this type of Samish setup, because the pawn structure looks very similar, and on both sides of the board, it's hard for black to break through, so they couldn't really break through with the f5 ideas, and it's because it would put the king in danger, and white just has a lot of extra space and of course an opening advantage, so it is not easy to win at all. But as long as there's pieces on the board and it's a bit unbalanced, that's exactly what the players need to really keep this game going and not make it an easy draw for the opponent to secure the win in the match. So a pawn break was finally made, and once again it's the same strategy, so that's why I want to show these both games together, because I feel like something in their psychology is after all the same, and that we can learn from, is that there's all of these same little strategies of how they play their moves. The positions are different, but the psychology is the same. So once again, always have to make the opponent calculate, and it has to include some sort of risk. So what she did here, I don't know if you noticed it, but the pawn on h6 is actually hanging after all of this.
No, I didn't notice that.
And so that just makes, that makes the opponent spend maybe 20 minutes on the clock. That makes them wonder, did they miss it? Is it working? What is the sacrifice for? And eventually, Koneru actually took it. So what do you think black was really planning to do here? And what was the reason for this sacrifice and imbalance?
Well, the question is, can you really capture the queen? But I don't see that happening. So let's look at another option. I don't see anything significant. Oh, well, no. So you could take on e2 with the bishop, then the knight might take back, and then the queen can go to b5. But I'm not sure yet how much it will help. But maybe it will. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So you're on the right track with bishop e2. So Once again, we have this bishop for knight trade, which is just something to have different pieces on the board, and just to impose some tactical calculations for the opponent. So the right move here is c6 to open the position to maybe win this pawn back, and then if we have these two pawns in the center, then it's going to be more worth it than one pawn on the side.
Yeah,
I would be so scared to play with a king like that. 100%, but once again, she probably had just nothing to lose, so she was good with that, because there was some counterplay and some chances to also attack the white king, which is actually what ended up happening. This king was in a lot more danger than the black king. So this c6 move was really important to open up the position, and to just get your own counterplay for black. And in a couple of moves, who do you think is better in this position already?
I have to say white looks stronger to me. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. But it's actually ended up being black. So it was also surprising that just in a few moves it changed. But it is true, because this queen was kind of out of play
Not
for a
really
very long
playing,
time.
Yeah.
So because of this g5 move, it closed up the path for the queen to come back into the defense, and it also had no attack. If white just had a couple of more moves to play with some h5, it would be done.
Yeah.
But there is not that time, because white's king is also in the center and under attack.
True.
So what ended up happening is there was already one winning line for black that could have led to a win.
Wow.
But it was really complicated, so maybe I'll show a bit of it. Of course, the first move, probably something that comes to mind, is queen c3 to make sure that the opponent doesn't castle. And this was good, and this was an accurate way to play. And no matter where the king goes, it's going to be in danger. If the king goes here, then we can have our knight join the attack.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of white's pieces are not too well defended, so it wouldn't really be good. In the actual game, they played king e2. And the way to win here was a bit crazy, but the move was rook to c8 with a very strange idea. So the idea itself is not strange, because you just want to move the queen and attack the bishop. Let's say queen b2, play queen b2 and attack the bishop and just win it eventually. But I think that Humpy was afraid of knight h5 here, or at least it looks like a really scary move to me, because there's mate threats, there's knight f6 threat, there's mate on h7 if we ever take that knight, and there's only one defense here for black. So now this one you can try to find that kind of saves.
I'm just thinking already, for you at home, what do you think is the only move to save this here? So I'm thinking of a material imbalance option right now. It's not working, unfortunately. What a pity.
You wanted to take on c2?
Yeah, would have been nice, but it's not working, because the king will move to the rook, which will be on c2, and then there is just a loss. If the king would move somewhere else, this would be fairly interesting, of course. Good. However, so how to defend on g7? I mean, there's only knight f5, which will be taken, of course. So that
queen g7 is the big threat right now.
Exactly. Oh, okay. So it has to be e4. There's nothing else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and e4 is a saving move, and it doesn't just save it; it makes the position winning for black. It's it's very complex, but it saves all the checkmates. It keeps up black's attack, and we can.
F3 is brutal.
Yeah, and we also created our own threats. But this was so complicated. First to find this, and then to not even to find e4, but to believe that this is fine after that, I think is the hardest part. But even finding it is also,
it's like this, the comic with the dog sitting in the house with the fire, and it's just saying it's fine. This is fine. I think
exactly. So she just had to believe it. So in the actual game, she played knight d5, which also makes sense, but it makes the win a lot harder, and it gives white some chances to come back, which they didn't use eventually, because the attack was really strong and hard to defend. And so once again, we see that there is a sacrifice, which is something that we always like to see, and it's an imbalance once again. So whenever you have to win, an imbalance is a good idea, because it makes the position strange. It makes more calculations, and it makes the opponent more likely to make a mistake. So white's king was in danger the whole time, which is exactly what the black's couple of moves are targeted against. But you have to also not forget about your own prophylaxis, of course. So that's why rook f8 is played.
Yeah, that was a mate threat already, just for a
there
second.
There was a big threat there. So after all, I'll get to the final position. And here, what do you think white Black played.
I think to do something good. So queen g2, king has to move to e1, knight d3, check, king goes to, well, cannot go to e2. Oh, that was better, right? Queen,
wait, you said
queen. Yeah, I said knight d3 check, but
knight d3. No, it was close. I thought you said that because after this we do play knight d3. So
oh, what? It's check, yeah, of course. Yeah. I thought, wait, we're mates. No, we're not. Now the king, wherever the king goes, it's another check by the queen. Yeah, that's nice. So rook takes.
This was the actual game. This was the actual game. Yeah, no matter where the king goes, we will just either win material or just defend against the mate and then win material. Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned the knight d3 strong move, and there's not really a way to make a sacrifice the exchange back either, because of this. And do you see why black is winning?
Yeah, because the pawn will move forward, and the queen on h6, which has been there for the last at least 10, 15 or more moves, is still there. What a game.
Exactly. So if it was anywhere else, it probably would have been fine. But d2 is the next big threat, and black will just end up being up a knight. So the game actually ended in a few more moves when the attack just became too strong, and the queen kept making checks until even a checkmate. It didn't have to end in a checkmate. Black could also just win the rook on d8 at some point, or just win the knight. Both of them would have been good, but there was even a checkmate that ended up with queen e1 here. So I thought these few games, they were very different, but they were similar in how they played it and how they tried to create these imbalances so much to make the opponent make mistakes. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of these games in the next matches when it gets even more heated and the opposition just gets closer and closer.
Svitlana, this was an absolutely great lesson. Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting and insightful, as always, of course. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's time to check out the World Cup again now. Bye-bye.